The more people you help become successful, the more successful you become. Steve Harvey. You have the power to be the boss of your own life. I'm your host, Monica Allen. I'm a wife, mom, entrepreneur, best-selling author, lifelong learner, and your biz bestie. I have a love and passion for all things small business. Growing my own company from $700 to over 7 figures annually, my goal is to bring you inspiration, business-focused topics and tips, encouragement, and a community that helps you launch, grow, and scale your business, whether you are a dreamer, a side hustler, or a seasoned entrepreneur. You are listening to the Become Your Own Boss podcast. It's summer. If you're a business owner in need of new gear for you and or your team, my company, Zeus's Closet, is offering a summer special for you bosses. Save 20% now on our small business package and moisture wicking polos and t-shirts. Simply use the promo code BOSS20 and save at Zeus'sCloset.com. The link is in the show notes. This week, I'm bringing you a conversation that just might change the way you think about entrepreneurship. If you've ever thought of owning a franchise, or if you're simply looking for a way to build wealth, reclaim your time, or leave a legacy, then you need to hear from Trish Skelfo. Trish is a powerhouse in the franchise world. She's a nationally recognized expert, ranking in the top 1% of franchise brokers across the country. As the founder of the Franchise Collective and Franchise Discount Marketplace, she's not only helping people find the right business, she's using AI to match aspiring owners with the perfect opportunity and giving them a rebate to jumpstart their new venture. With nearly a decade of experience and hundreds of successful placements under her belt, Trish is known for her gift. Yes, gift of helping people land in a business that aligns with their goals and lifestyle. Whether you're ready to leave corporate, expand your portfolio, or just explore what's out there, Trish brings the clarity, strategy, and heart to help you make the next move with confidence. So let's get into it. Hi, Trish. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Monica. I'm really excited to be here.
I am excited to have you here. Trish, let's just get started with you telling us, why did you start your business?
Wow. Well, what's the expression? Necessity is the mother of invention. That's really it. I got divorced and I needed an income that was going to, give me the quality of life that I wanted. And I lucked into a job. Like, I didn't know this was a thing. And a friend of a friend was the vice president of a franchise at the time. And they had an opening and he said, you should come apply. And I was like, I don't know anything about franchising. I don't know anything about selling. I've never done sales. He's like, no, it's just customer relations. So I was like, all right. And I got hired. But that job taught me that this field existed. And when 6 months into that job, they did this big restructuring and I got laid off. I was like, well, gosh, now what do I do? And I thought, well, I know about this, maybe I could do this. So that's really what started it. And then the more I learned about it, the more I realized that this could be a way for me to not only have build a great life for myself, but I was passionate about entrepreneurism and the idea that I could help people who wanted to, venture into that field or business ownership for themselves was really attractive to me. So that was kind of the initial reason that I went down this road.
Gotcha. So originally you started working for a franchisor to help them sell their franchises.
Exactly right.
All right. And now you're helping other franchisors do this thing with their businesses.
Yes.
That's amazing. Okay. So tell me this. What has been your biggest challenge as you started growing your own business?
Oh, that first year. That first year was tough. I really swung for the fence when I started this business because I had no money. I was living in the room over my friend's garage. I convinced the broker group that I was joining to train me for free. Normally they charge like $25,000 to do this training. And, I told them my story and I convinced them to let me pay them out of future commissions. So the deal was that whether I failed or succeeded, I still owed them the money. So I was on the hook for that training. And then I had to borrow money from my best friend to buy leads because I didn't have any money to do that. And so I was 10 months into this journey. I had not closed a deal. I was down to my last $1,500. I had maxed out all my credit cards. I didn't even have enough money left to buy more leads. I didn't know how I was going to keep going. And then I had the idea to run an ad, and I had enough money to do that. I ran an ad for this one particular franchise, and I closed my first deal. And that was it. I was off to the races from there. But yeah, I was really sweating it that first year.
But you must have really believed in this business for you to put it all down like that. What made you believe so much in it?
I don't know that it was as much that I believed in franchising as I believed in my ability to help people. And that resonated with me. And I felt like this was my best chance to do that. And I had learned enough. I had learned enough in the training, and I had learned enough in this 10-month process of what wasn't working. And I just knew I was getting closer to what would work. And it was just that last little push that made it all possible.
Can you say what that first franchise was that you sold?
I would rather not, only
Okay.
because they're not in business anymore.
Okay. Well, we don't have to talk about that. Okay, so Trish, you made it through the first year. You closed your first deal. What did that feel like?
I was so happy. I jumped up and down. And I might have even screamed a little bit because it felt like, by the skin of my teeth that I had pulled it off. And I just knew after I closed that first one that I could do it. Like I could keep going.
You had
So
a system at that point, right?
yeah, well, I mean, I'd figured out what worked, and I had found I felt like I'd found my way. Like, okay, and now I got this.
Got it. And how many years have you been in business now?
This is 9.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
exciting.
you.
Yeah, 9 years. And
Yeah,
I know you're a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, so that means your business has
I
hit
am.
7 figures, which is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That was a huge milestone. Let's see. That happened in our third year, my third year. I hit well into my 6 figures my first year. And then I doubled that the next year. And then I tripled it in my third year. And that's what allowed me to join EO, which has been the most amazing experience and has really helped me grow from there. So I've just been super grateful for this journey. It has blessed me in so many ways.
That's EO is amazing. I will say that. It
Yeah,
helped our business grow as well. So it's just nice to have the connections, nice to have the learning pieces, all of that.
absolutely.
Now that you've been in this for 9 years, if
Mhm.
you could go back and tell your younger self anything, what would you tell yourself?
Well, of course, now that I figured it out, I would tell myself how to do it. So,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't go through the painful 10 months. But, I think the biggest lesson, because since then I've launched other businesses as well that I have alongside my brokering business, and just don't quit. Just don't give up. There were so many times I wanted to and thought, am I crazy? Because I was just going into debt and I wasn't getting any traction. And I talk to people often who did quit, and now they're working jobs for other people instead of building wealth for themselves. And I'm so grateful that I didn't do that. But I almost did. I almost quit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we probably all wanted to quit at some point, for sure.
Well, I think it's part of the entrepreneurial journey. I
Hmm.
don't think anybody is an entrepreneur that doesn't have those moments.
Right.
Yeah, I
Agreed.
mean, the early days for sure, but even well into it, I mean, think of what people went through during COVID. People survived that just barely in some cases, and other people didn't. You just don't know what challenges life is going to throw you, but don't give up. Don't give
Yeah,
up.
that's very true. I can remember thinking around that 2021, like kind of after the
Yeah.
COVID big year, I thought, okay, I'm done with this. I'm exhausted. I'm
Yes.
so
Yes,
tired.
for
But
sure.
but I read a book by Mark Schaefer that talked about cumulative advantage, and I realized I had too much cumulative advantage just to let it go. Our name, our brand is known, so why would you just let that go? But yeah, don't give up. I love that.
Well, and when you talk about that 2021 year, my best year in business up to that point was 2020.
Oh
And then
wow.
at the end of 2020, one of the platforms where I was doing a lot of advertising completely changed their platform. And 75% of my lead flow evaporated overnight. 2021 was like a huge challenge for us. And again, don't quit, figure it out. Just keep going. There's an answer. There's always an answer.
Right. Yeah. There is an answer. Just have to sometimes dig
Yeah.
really deep for it.
Dig really deep.
Let's talk about the brokerage side of your business.
Yeah.
What makes you different from other franchise brokers?
Well, I think the most notable difference at the moment is this platform that I've created. Actually coming out of in that 2021 year when I lost 75% of my platform or my, lead flow generator, I had to think of a new way. And what I realized was that the way that I was doing things was a way that I didn't have control over.
Mm,
And I was never going to have security in my business if I wasn't controlling how I generated business. And so that got me to thinking, like, how am I going to do this? And I had this idea of creating a platform that would match people with their ideal franchise. But I couldn't quite figure out how to do it. There were a lot of I had the idea, but I couldn't figure out the implementation. And then when AI came along, that was the missing piece. That was what I really needed to make it work the way that I envisioned. And then clones became a thing, and that just further amplified the experience that people could have. Now, 3 years later, have fully developed this platform that does just that. I mean, there's an AI clone of me that people are able to interact with, and they can have a video call or a text exchange or a phone call. And, she walks them through all the questions that I would ask of them if I was on the phone with them. And she takes those answers and then matches them against a portfolio of brands that I've hand selected. So out of the thousands of franchise brands out there, and there are more than 4,000 franchise brands, I have selected, I think there are about 176 represented there now, and we're adding new ones all the time. And so she takes those answers and matches them against all of those brands and chooses the top 5 for you. As a human being, I can only know so many brands in my head well enough that I could make the best choice out of hundreds or thousands for any particular person. Now, I'm really good at making matches from the brands that I do know, but to
hmm
have access to all of them and to be able to leverage AI, and we've all had an experience with AI now. I mean, we know how powerful that is. To give it all of that information about yourself and then say, okay, show me the very best option for me, that's huge. And I
Yeah.
think that's the real critical difference between what we're doing and what other brokers are doing. But, in my one-on-one consulting, I would say the thing that I have leveraged up to this point, prior to the platform being available for people, is having a genuine desire to make sure that people are matched with the best possible choice. Because
hmm
I recognize that these people are taking a huge risk. I mean, this is more money than they'll ever spend on anything likely. For some people, this is all the money they've saved in the world. Maybe it's their retirement fund that they're leveraging. Sometimes it's equity in their home. And unlike buying a house where you've got this tangible thing that you could just go sell if you need to, a business and its success relies on you betting on yourself and
Right.
having the right opportunity that leverages your skills and what you bring to the table to ensure that you have the ability to be successful in this thing. And I take that so seriously.
Yeah.
And I don't show people brands that I wouldn't invest in. That's another kind of basic premise of how I operate is if I wouldn't invest in it, I'm not going to try to tell someone else why they should.
Right. And it also just hearing your story too, even though you didn't invest in a franchise per se, you
I
invested
have
in
in the
yourself.
past.
You have. Okay. Well, we'll
I
talk about
have.
that too.
Yeah.
But you invested in yourself and that you pretty much threw in all the money you had. So you understand their shoes. You've walked in their shoes already. So you get it.
And I know what it feels like to fail or to be on the brink of failing and how 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 crushing that is. And when you've got a family and you're trying to provide for them, it's just so important to get it right. So in any way that I can give someone an advantage and help them along that path,
Yeah.
I really want to be able to do that.
And I had an opportunity to talk to your AI.
Ah, did you? How
I
was it?
did. It was good. It was good. It was very interesting because it asked me, different questions. And I didn't have a lot of time to go through the whole thing, but it was really neat how it asked me how much I had to invest and how was I going to get the money and that type of thing. I could tell that it was definitely narrowing down the options based on the
Yeah.
questions. It's really neat.
Well, we're still tweaking it. A clone is only as good as the information that it gets and it learns and it gets better. She's definitely improving all the time and we appreciate all the feedback and everybody checking it out and putting her through her paces. It takes about 10 minutes to go through the whole process. We look forward to hearing people's comments and continuing to improve the experience that people will have.
Yeah, and I'll put the link to it to that website in the show notes so people can go check out your clone.
Oh, fantastic. I would love that. Thank you.
That'll be really good. Tell us a little bit about your investment in a franchise. What made you want to do that? And if you want to share which one you did, you don't have to, of course, but tell us a little bit about that process for yourself.
My best friend, it kind of started with her. She is the one that loaned me the money to buy leads when I first started this journey. And we were sitting around talking one day about how we really wanted to do a business together. And I'm fortunate in the work that I do that I get to see all different kinds of businesses and all different franchise opportunities crossing my desk all the time. So I'm always vetting things and looking at different opportunities. And this one came along that just looked really exciting. And, we invested in it. We had a great time doing it. We ultimately sold it. The franchisee to our south wanted to expand and they needed to go north to do that. And we were both feeling like, the business was taking more time than we had because we were involved in other things. We decided to sell it and it was a great option for us. It worked out really well for us in the end. But I loved having the experience of being a franchisee because that was the one hat I hadn't worn. And now that I've done it, I think it really helps me be a better broker and a better steward for the franchisees or the prospective franchisees that I do work with, just preparing them for the process that's ahead and, how to ask the right questions and how to make sure that they're doing the due diligence that they should do. Yeah, it really gave me a great set of tools, that I didn't have before.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what would you say was like your biggest lesson learned to help your clients?
From the franchise experience,
From the
or being a
franchise.
franchisee, I think the validation, when you go through the due diligence process with a franchise, you go through something called the discovery process. And in that process, generally it takes about 4 to 6 weeks. That's when you're understanding the numbers and you're talking to the founder and you get an opportunity to talk to existing franchisees. Talking to existing franchisees and doing that peek behind the curtain, I think is
Mhm.
really important. You want to understand not what could go right, but what could go wrong. I always tell people hope for the best and plan for the worst
Mhm.
because you just don't know. I mean, none of us really know. We actually became franchisees of that business in early 2020, like a month before COVID happened. And so that was a challenge in and of itself. Who could have predicted or planned for that? But, you go into it making sure that you've got enough money, you're well capitalized. You do all that you can to give yourself the edge, the advantage, and to prepare yourself for success.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like definitely a beneficial step to helping, your clients tremendously. I love that.
I'm the first one to say this isn't for you. I'll have people come to me and say, "Oh, I think I want this," or "I was thinking about that." I had some clients last year, in fact. Well, maybe it's 2 years now. They were gonna buy car washes. They were well down the road before they met me. They were getting really close to doing that deal. I mean, they were gonna be leveraging 7 figures to make that investment and potentially selling their house. Like, I mean, they were going all in on this. And it was actually a mutual friend who said, before you do that, you should talk to Trish and just see what she thinks. So we met at a Starbucks and had a conversation. And I'm like, okay, so tell me why? Why car washes?
Hmm.
And he told me what he was thinking. He'd come from the auto industry. It made sense for him to stay in something related to cars. And I said to him, I said, well, if I could get you an option that would cost you 20% of what you're looking to invest in car washes and give you the same revenue at the end of the day, would you be open to that? He's like, absolutely. So, I showed him a few options. They leaned into one. They ultimately bought it. They are so happy. I mean, they are loving what they're doing. They're passionate about it. They're in the men's health space. Total departure from what they were planning to buy. But it was
Yeah.
really about aligning them with something that resonated with who they were as people. We're going to give them the lifestyle and the income they were looking for, maximize their purchasing power. They were able to keep most of their money. It's still sitting in their bank account. And now they have this business that, where they're helping people, which is really a purpose for them. Stories like that make what I do completely worthwhile.
Yeah. You just talking about that in the beginning, the 7 figures, the selling the house, like my anxiety began to rise
Yeah,
just from
yeah,
you
yeah. Well,
talking about.
mine too, mine too. And look, there's so much out there on the internet, right? Buy boring businesses, laundromats and car washes and rental properties. And everybody's trying to do that now. And yeah, you can make a lot of money doing those things. And yes, they can be passive, but there are downsides to all of those, like there are to everything else. So it really is about finding the thing that's right for you.
Right. Exactly. Trish, tell me this. If, first of all, why should someone consider a franchise over just their idea and jumping into something, building it from scratch? You and I both built something from scratch. Why should someone perhaps not do that and jump into a franchise?
Well, franchising is not for everyone. That's true. And for people that have a passion for a particular thing and they've got an idea that's unique and they want to go start something, I think it's challenging but absolutely doable. I mean, you and I have both done it. And so have many, many other people. But franchising enables you to buy into a process that's already been created. Somebody else has worked out the kinks. Somebody else has figured out the marketing. Somebody else has done the branding. Somebody else has figured out how many employees you need and what the quality of those employees should be, meaning, what are their characteristics? What skills should they have? They're able to tell you, look, here's the job description that you're trying to fill. Like, go post an ad on somewhere and this is who you're looking for. And when you find them, these are the questions you're supposed to ask.
Mm.
All of that stuff is figured out. You're not reinventing the wheel. So I like to say it's kind of like buying a business that's already 3 years old. It's that first 3 years where you're figuring all that stuff out for yourself as a business owner, 3 to 5. But usually those first three are like touch and go, and you make a lot of expensive mistakes. You try a lot of different things to figure out your marketing before you figure out what works. Maybe your branding doesn't quite hit and you have different iterations of that. You hire people you think are going to be great. They turn out not to be great. That's an expensive mistake. Somebody else has taken that hit. So
Yeah.
somebody else has figured all that stuff out, and they give you a playbook and they say, okay, if you do these things, you can be successful. And then you've got the track record of all the other franchisees who've come before you who have followed the process and who have become successful. So you know it works.
Right.
And then you have the support of all those franchisees. So, one of the things that I hear people say all the time is, I don't want someone telling me what to do. And I say, this isn't about someone telling you what to do. This is about someone being there to help you do what you want to do. And yes, there are guardrails. You want to keep all the people rowing in the same direction. I mean, it's for the benefit of the franchise that everybody's following the same playbook. But this isn't about being micromanaged. This is about a support system. There's somebody at the other end of the phone to tell you whether or not that quote you just got for insurance is too high. You've got somebody on the other end of the phone who can help you when you've got employee challenges. There's a franchisee who's come before you who's probably figured out that you don't need X piece of equipment until you're generating a certain amount of money. Those are the kinds of things that a franchise affords you. So it's not just what the franchisor is going to do for you, but it's also about the support of all of your fellow franchisees. It's being in business for yourself, but not by yourself.
Yeah. I like that. I like you're buying into a process. That makes
Yeah.
so much sense to me because I still feel like I'm figuring out stuff and I've been
Oh,
doing things for 16 years and I'm
me
still
too. Me
figuring.
too. There's so many days when I would love to be able to pick up the phone and say, how should I do this? And what should I do
Right.
about that? When you are a solo entrepreneur building something from scratch, there
Yeah.
isn't somebody out there to call. I mean, you can
Exactly.
you can find people that have various types of experience, and certainly being an EO has been that for us. There's collective consciousness and a collective experience that we're all able to draw on, but most entrepreneurs don't have access to that.
Right. Just the help with the branding and marketing on a regular basis, that,
Huge.
yeah, because you're
It is
trying to figure
huge.
it out all the time. Should I advertise here? Should I do that? And a lot of times, like
Well,
you said, they already have that figured out.
and it's one of the mistakes that I see people make all the time is throwing money at marketing in sort of this shotgun approach. It's hard to figure out which marketing company is really going to be able to produce results for you because everybody tells you they're the best thing since sliced bread, and you don't find out till you've spent a lot of money and didn't get anywhere that they are not, or at
Yeah.
least that approach wasn't the right approach for you. When you're working with a franchisor, they've usually figured out what marketing has worked. And then once they figured that out for themselves and started franchising, they usually go find a marketing company that drives the marketing on behalf of the franchisees. So, it's your budget that's paying for that, but someone else is implementing it. Somebody else is figuring out what to say. And somebody else is figuring out, what those campaigns should look like and when they should be posted and where they should appear. Most of us are not marketing experts. So, and the
Right.
fact that that company is being held responsible by the franchisor and the franchisor is vested in your success, that's another layer of protection for you that, you've got somebody in your back pocket looking out for you.
Yeah. That's huge. I mean, I think if I wouldn't have had the idea of starting the business that we started some years ago, I would have been so down for a franchise because I
Yeah.
always just knew I wanted to have my own business. Even as
Mhm.
a young girl, I knew I wanted to do that. A franchise would have been right. Who knows? Maybe down the road I'll still do it. But to me, it's great to have somebody to kind of have that backstop and just some help to talk through things and get
Yeah, for
done
sure.
faster. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
and that's one of the other things I like about franchising for people who are already entrepreneurs. If you have a vision for diversifying your revenue stream and having maybe multiple businesses and a portfolio of investments, franchising can be a great option for people who have that vision because they do have all those systems in place. And because, many times you can find a franchise that could be run as an executive model where you're managing your manager, you're not day to day in your business. And that does enable you to build a portfolio and have multiple businesses and multiple locations. I mean, look at these people that have franchise empires. That's how they do that. We hear about celebrities all the time that have, 48 Quiznos locations or whatever it
Right.
is. I'm just throwing that out there, but that's how they're able to do that because the
Yeah.
model supports it.
It's so interesting that you say that because I just saw an Instagram post one day last week where they talked about Shaquille O'Neal has like
Oh, he's huge.
700
Yeah. He's
franchises.
huge. Doesn't he? Isn't it like a fast food franchise, I think? I want to say it's something in the food space.
Yeah, he has food and non-food, I think. I think he has kind of both. And you focus on non-food, right, Trish?
I do primarily, I've been heavily focused on non-food for my whole career in this industry, but I can tell you lately there are some food concepts that I'm like, oh, I might step outside my own box here. There are a couple that I'm really excited about.
Oh, that's really good to know.
Incredible numbers and different in the food space, not your typical fast food or smoothie or they've got an interesting unique approach and the numbers are incredible. So yeah, I might actually include some food.
Well, it sounds to me too like if someone is interested in franchising, they really should have a franchise broker because it sounds to me like you're
For
really
sure.
looking out. Well, you've already kind of vetted things. So you
Mhm.
know kind of the pros and cons versus if I'm just stepping into something, of course, a franchisor is going to tell me all the great things.
That's exactly right. I was just at a franchise expo. The World Franchise Expo was in Miami last week. And I was there and I was walking around and just talking to people who were interested in becoming franchisees. And so many of them commented that they were surprised that there were so few brokers there. In fact, I only met myself. I mean, I was there and I met one other person that does what I do. And I thought about that. I mean, I thought about the fact that that is why I created this platform because, uh, I'm fortunate to be one of the top 1% in the broker world, in the country. And so I know that I'm good at helping people find the right fit. But just like there are a lot of not great franchise options out there are also brokers that have different motivation and run their business differently. So, finding someone that really wants to find you the right fit, someone who's going to take the time to get to know you and do the research and make the recommendations. It's huge because you're right. You go to one of these franchise expos, for example, or there are these franchise portals where you can go and you can search for different franchise brands. You're lost in a sea of options. The
Right.
average person doesn't know what questions to ask. They don't know what to look for. What are the red flags? What are the things that I should be looking out for? They don't have the opportunity to peek behind the curtain. And that's what we as brokers, I think, really bring to the table for people is not only knowing, how to find them a fit that aligns with their needs, but also how to avoid the ones that are to be avoided. We all
Right.
talk. When we have bad experiences or we have a client that's had a bad experience, we share that information. It gets around quickly. I mean, there are brands we're not going to show. And we're not going to
Mhm.
show them because we're not going to set people up for a bad experience. It's really important to us. And, I think working with a broker, if you're going to buy a franchise, working with a broker is I definitely highly would recommend it. Highly recommend it.
Yeah. And I think too, being a broker, you are motivated to make sure the fit is right because they're going to then think about you positively and that helps your business in the future.
Well, certainly. I mean, referrals, we all want those and we want our clients to have a good experience. And for us, it's not just a good experience for the clients of ours who become franchisees, but it's also the franchisors. We become known for making good matches and having successful franchisees because those matches are good. And then the more you do that and the more you have that reputation, the more the franchisors want to work with you. So, reputation is everything, and that is a big part of how we succeed and kind of elevate in this industry. But I think the other key piece is I don't want a phone call ever from one of my clients saying, "Why did you show me this thing?" I don't ever want someone to be struggling and call me and say, "This was the biggest mistake I ever made. And you
Yeah.
showed it to me." You know, that is that's always a thing in the back of my head. I
Right.
I do not ever want that phone call.
I gotcha. That makes sense. Makes sense. I know it may vary depending on the franchisor, but typically, if someone's interested, they come to you, they're interested in doing a franchise. What's the timeline like for them to actually close on one from kind of start to close?
Well, it depends on how long it takes for us to hone in on the match, but usually I can do that within 1 or 2 phone calls, and those usually are about 30 minutes in length, and then we make the introduction to the franchisor to begin the discovery process. So, assuming that they like the thing that we've chosen for them, they could be through the process typically in 4 to 6 weeks. And then the time to have their doors open depends on the franchise. Obviously, brick and mortar takes longer because you have to find your space, and then occasionally, there's a build out that needs to be done. The timeline for that can delay things for people. But in brick and mortar, you're usually looking at 6 to 10 months, I would say, from the time we begin the process to the time you have your doors open, assuming that the build out is not too extensive.
Right. And I know just kind of looking at your website, doing a little exploration, you have
Yeah.
something special that you offer back to people who close with you, correct?
Yes, yes. This is the only place in franchising that you can get a rebate on your franchise fees. For people who go through the website and work with the AI clone and do the match and go through that whole process, once they close on their franchise agreement and pay their franchise fees, they are then eligible for a rebate. And that rebate comes from us. It does not come from the franchisor. We follow them through the process, and once the deal is done, then that's when the rebate kicks in. Yes, that is a key difference between us and everybody else out there, that you do have an opportunity to get some of those funds back.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it seems to me too, like just kind of having you by someone's side would be really helpful to, like you mentioned earlier, asking the right questions, through discovery. And if you then have questions, it sounds like you're there to help them kind of work through those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then also recommendations for funding. If somebody needs funding, we have those resources that we can provide for them. Legal, you want a specific franchise attorney, not just any attorney, but you want a franchise attorney to be reviewing documents for you. They look at franchise disclosure documents all day long, they look at franchise agreements all day long. It's very different terminology than what you'll see in other contracts. We have those resources that we can connect people with as well. And then, of course, just any questions that they might have during the discovery process. Maybe they have concerns and they don't know how to voice them. Maybe something doesn't feel right. And that's when I either have to kind of step in and address those concerns, or say, you know what, maybe this one isn't the right fit. Let's pivot. Let's go look at something else. Being there through the process and helping people kind of work through those emotions, because it can be an emotional process. I mean, it's risky, you're putting a lot of money on the line, it's a huge decision, and there are lots of times in that process where, having somebody to kind of talk through that with you can be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, Trish, tell people what's the best way for them to reach you or your clone?
Or my clone? Well, it's the franchise discount marketplace, and you're going to put up the link for people. So that's going to be super helpful. They can also find me on LinkedIn, Trish Skelfo. Send me DMs there. I'm happy to reach out to people. And all of my contact information is available on the website as well. So they can reach me in either place.
Great. Well, Trish, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us into
Thank
your
you.
business, as well as telling us about what may be a really great way to get into business for those out there who want to become their own boss. I really appreciate your time.
I really appreciate you having me here. Thank you so much. This has been a really wonderful experience. I hope it's helped people.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Trish, thank you so much for becoming part of the Become Your Own Boss podcast family. I hope for you listeners, today's conversation with Trish opened your eyes to a whole new way of thinking about business ownership or becoming your own boss. Truthfully, after talking to Trish, I'm thinking, sure, I have a couple of businesses, but you know what? I wouldn't mind finding that right franchise for me to expand my portfolio. So who knows? I'll keep you posted. Whether you're exploring franchising for the first time or just soaking up inspiration from someone who's built a thriving business through grit, heart, and strategy, there's a lesson in here for all of us. And if you're ready to take the next step, be sure to check out the link in the show notes to connect with Trish or her AI clone. Yes, her clone, just as we talked about. In talking to Trish's clone, you might just find your dream business, and in just a few short minutes. I will share with you my numerous takeaways in next week's podcast episode. Be sure to listen in and not miss those because there were several. There were so many. Again, the reason I don't want to keep going on because it will make this episode much, much longer. So we'll talk about that next week. Thank you for listening today. I'm grateful for you. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with a friend who's been dreaming of becoming their own boss. Also, take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And remember, now is the time. Now is the time to level up, leave a legacy, and become your own boss.